What's up, guys? Evan Aldo here, taking a walk right now, enjoying some sunlight in the morning in South Florida. So, the latest thing I've been kind of into, I've been reading reading more about Ray Dalio, reading his new book, Principles for a Changing World Order, something like that. Kind of you learn from him a lot, the basic thing of risk management. If you guys aren't familiar with risk management, that's one of the biggest lessons with him. Well, the main story of him is, I believe, his prediction before the 1980s was that there was going to be a depression. Serious economic trouble would happen in the 1980s, and we all know, it was a very prosperous time. The market did extremely well. From 1980 to all the way to about 2000, that was when it finally went down a lot. But he was completely wrong in such a, if you're just wrong, if you just say it's going to be a depression and then the decade is just maybe an average decade, there's a little recession, nothing too bad, you were wrong, but you weren't wrong that bad. If you're wrong the way it looks, if you're just completely opposite, wow, considered historically one of the most prosperous times in the American Empire. But that's crazy. So he talks about what he learned from that, and he lost everything essentially went completely broke from that. Was betting it all that would crash. I'm just thinking, it's risk management, because at the end of the day, and this is Trading in the Zone by Mark Douglas talks about this a lot. Anything can happen. It's all a game of probability. So never ever risk more than you aren't comfortable losing on one particular trade. It's risk reward ratio. You want to do it in a way where you could make money over time, but at the same time, maybe if you do risk everything on one thing, you could win it. You definitely could win it, or you could lose everything. It's an interesting thing. Dalio, he talks about how he wanted to work at that point after he lost everything. It was a lot of thinking about going back to a 9 to 5, something like that, just working for somebody else, helping somebody else get rich. He's doing some construction over there. But yeah, and then he obviously now he's worth $20 billion, and it's kind of crazy to think about that too, because you realize kind of the mistakes you can make, and it seems like that's just career ending, blowing completely everything on that bet. He was still kind of young, but how old would he have been in the 1980s? If he was probably born in the late 40s or something, he would have been, not that old, probably 40 the most, in his 30s. So that's still kind of young. That's not too bad. But it's definitely interesting to see stories like this and to see how he came, through so much, did so much better, later on. Now he's worth, I think, $20 billion. When I first heard of him, he was worth like $16 billion. And how Bridgewater was able to do so well in the recession. But then a year after, they didn't do as well. But they thought it would be worse. They thought the recovery would take longer than it did. But yeah. And we're in an interesting time. We're in an interesting time where it's like inflation is so high, extremely high. It's getting outrageous, gas prices, oil prices. But people who are going along on oil, they're doing pretty well for now. It seems like we got a few more months of that, probably, maybe more. And there's a lot of signs, of a kind of a changing world order, kind of a crisis. What Ray Dalio talks about, he talks about, different empires and, people, a lot of people in America, I hear, they're so delusionally optimistic about America, about how this is always, they kind of think it's always going to be that empire, always. And it's kind of like no empire ever lasts forever. Nothing ever, everything eventually kind of goes to zero. Whether that takes a couple months or a couple centuries or even longer, Everything eventually goes to zero. And, he basically says, no one knows exactly what's going to happen. He talks about this in his new book. No one knows it. I haven't finished it yet, but read the beginning parts. No one knows exactly what's going to happen, obviously. That's the main thing here, because if you did, you'd become a billionaire pretty quickly. It takes a little bit of time. It takes at least a few years, at least. So the main things I see, printing a ton of money, obviously. That's a major issue. What else? Terrible leadership. No leadership that really looks presidential, seems presidential. We haven't had that in many years now. The way people act too, there's a lot of mental weakness. There's just a lot of weakness. The way the culture is, it's a lot worse than it used to be. And some people may disagree with that, but I've been to a lot of places. It's different, and different in better ways than a lot of other places. Not to say that it's all bad in America, but it's changing. It's definitely is. And with everything happening, with all the conflicts, we look at Russia too, look at China. China's the big power that Dalio thinks is probably going to be, the next one. And it does seem likely. We don't know exactly what's going to happen here. We obviously don't know, but it does seem relatively likely in that extent. So, what could you do with all these things going on? We're in a major kind of stagflationary area. Consumer prices keep going up while the market's going down. Technicals look for the NASDAQ similar to how they looked before the dot-com bubble popped, especially on things like Microsoft, even Apple, I believe. Doesn't look too great. It's been doing the worst. NASDAQ's kind of done the worst since that time so far. Way down. S&P 500 looks like it has more room to come down. So you look at all these things, and what do you conclude from that? Well, we got to look at how to improve yourself individually. There's a lot of distractions too. A lot of distractions. Now we got TikTok, and there's new social media things. It's good to take a walk once in a while. Be out with nature. Experience this. Experience that. Stay in the present moment more. That's one of the most important things. Ray Dalio talks about this as well. How he got into transcendental meditation. A lot of, even Tim Ferriss's, I think, survey on it, like high performance people, 80% or more have at least some type of mindfulness or meditation practice each day. Ray Dalio kind of credits it to a lot of his success. So, I've gotten away from it a little bit, but there's definitely, because your mind is racing a lot, especially because with the internet and everything, there's just so much noise, so many different things coming at you at all times. There's so many different ideas, and you're just thinking throughout the day, I got to learn this, I got to learn that. There's so much, and you got to calm those racing thoughts. They'll get you. They'll give you anxiety. You got to calm that down. And taking. Ray Dalio says 20 minutes twice a day. I think that's what a lot of big people say. That Schwarzenegger said that, I believe, 20 minutes twice a day, morning and at night, and then your waves are in theta in the morning, and at night, like when you first wake up and when you go to sleep, that theta state, that's the best time to do it. I would say try to probably do it when you first wake up. That's what I've been trying to do. 20 minutes in the morning, 20 minutes at night. If you can't do that, I think there's even probably a lot of benefit to doing it just for a few minutes, even 5 minutes every morning, because your mind is a muscle, and you could really train that. And controlling your mind is a big thing, because if you can control your thoughts, you can control your reality. You could definitely control your reality. You control your thoughts, you could create your reality. But if you can't control your thoughts, and your mind is just racing and racing and racing and racing, like crazy, and you're seeing high inflation rates, you're seeing stagflation, you're seeing all these issues, you know, that's where it gets tough. That's where it gets tough to manifest something new. That's where it gets tough to change things and make them a lot better. So you really got to focus on that. I mean, I struggle with that myself. Everybody does, but you'd be surprised how quickly you could train any muscle, even, you know, your mental muscle, mind. So definitely, you know, try to do that. I don't have all the answers on really how to meditate the best way. I'm not an expert on it. I used to be more into it, but I'm trying to get more into it now, to be focused and more calm. And then visualization, obviously, you know, to feel and act like you already have something and it will come to you. But it's tough to do that when you don't have too much of a control of your thoughts. So that's ultimately, you know, the most important thing. And I talk about this a lot, and I think it's really important. Yeah, I think it's important to kind of repeat the things that are most important. Repeat the things that are the most life-changing. So we look at all these things happening, and, you know, people are calling for both ways, you know, all the inflation, it's still tough to, you know, it hurts the younger generation a lot. It probably doesn't affect older generation as much, but it does, you know, it affects everybody to a certain extent. Probably the only people they say it really doesn't affect at all is the ultra rich. That's what kind of Ray Dalio was talking about. And then, you know, another thing, the view of an empire ending is there's a lot of debt, you get populist candidates, there's a lot of factors that that portray that. And also he was talking about, this is actually really good, how people think history kind of repeats itself quickly. History does repeat itself, but it takes longer. So, for example, a lot of people in the beginning of the 1950s, you know, they came back from the war or whatever, they were very hesitant to put money into the stock market. Why? Because of the Great Depression. They were afraid that would happen again. However, they missed out on one of the most prosperous times in American history. They missed out on that because they thought it would repeat. A lot of people probably after 2008 from, I don't know what year, 2010 to 2015, held off on the market. They missed out on one of the most prosperous times. Well, in terms of it going just up, in terms of, you know, money increasing. And then, you know, I kind of know a lot of people got into it, kind of FOMO'd in a couple months ago, FOMO'd in towards the end of last year, beginning of this year. And maybe that's, you know, because they think this history of just keep going up is going to repeat. So you got to look at that. You know, Dalio was talking about, you know, longer historical things, to look back 100 years history that we don't really look at, history that nobody looks at. So I feel like you have a big advantage if you're looking at stuff that not too many people are looking at. That's always big too. If you're reading things that not too many people, you're seeing, you know, you're getting conventional wisdom. You know, Dan Pena has said this a lot of people have said this a lot. Conventional wisdom isn't going to get you too far. You know, if you take advice from somebody, that's going to make you end up more like them. So if you're taking advice from conventional wisdom, you're just going to be like a conventional person. You got to take advice from, you know, outside the box. You know, you got to take advice from things that people aren't listening to much. People, you know, you need to surround yourself. Also surround yourself, obviously. You're the average of the 5 people you hang around with. I think that's true. That saying is true to a certain extent, or completely true, really, to possibly. It's very true. So, you know, what you're around, surround yourself with the right people. So look at these historical things. You know, definitely, you know, stay mentally, especially in tough times. You got to stay mentally strong, mentally calm, collected, stoic, especially for trading, especially for, you know, it's a crypto channel, especially for people into crypto. We do, you know, other things as well on this channel too. We talk about other, you know, other equities, commodities as well. But, you know, for that volatile market, for that volatile area, you got to stay calm, collected, stoic. That's kind of the big secret in having risk management. That's the big secret in realizing anything could happen in any aspect of life. But at the same time, you could kind of create your reality if you have control of your thoughts. But you're not going to have control of your thoughts unless you're stoic, unless you're calm, unless you're collected, unless you're in the present moment. So, you know, that's kind of the big thing to look at. People talk about, you know, now with the masses, you know, the masses are always wrong, the masses are always right, usually. People trade based on that. It's hard to really see, you know, a fear and greed index. Leave a comment down below if you know how that's calculated. Like, how do we calculate the fear and greed index? Like, how do we know the actual amount of fear people have? And I know a lot of people, you know, who say like, oh, everybody's bearish, so I'm going to be bullish. Look, I mean, I don't think that really means too much, because it's so hard to really get an actual gauge of what people are. I mean, we're in a time right now where people, you know, they're used to those big returns in the market. They're used to that 30% a year in the S&P 500, 20% a year. And, you know, they want to believe it's still going to happen. But, you know, you got to look at other asset classes. You got to look at other ways to get that. It may not be the same way. You always got to, you know, change your game, change your technique like an athlete. I'm sure, you know, the same techniques for a sport, the other teams are going to catch on to them. You know, something that may have won you the Super Bowl one year isn't going to work the next year, because, you know, the other teams are going to catch on to your techniques, and they're going to realize they're going to counter trade you. They're going to realize it doesn't work. So that's, you know, that's a big thing to look at as well. You know, always changing, always adapting to new times. Always adapting to new times. So I'll leave you guys with that. I think we're approaching a new time right here. I made a video talking about, it was interesting, Tom Brady, you know, how it's beginning a new era because he retired. Came out of retirement. So, you know, I mean, came out of retirement now. So it's kind of like, he always seems to, and this is just, I have some interesting observations I make, but, you know, he won the Super Bowl, I believe it was right after 9/11. He won that Super Bowl. Won the Super Bowl right after COVID. Maybe there's another crisis. Don't want to be, you know, I'm normally as optimistic as possible, but anything could happen. Maybe there's another crisis this year. Maybe, you know, maybe that's where the economy really things really hit with this empire. Brady wins the Super Bowl next year. He retires. That's your end of your American empire right there. That's why I'll leave you guys with crazy prediction right there. I don't know if it's gonna happen, but get creative. Always be positive though. I'm normally, you know, anything could happen here, but yeah. All right, guys, have a good one. Hope you enjoyed the video. Please please subscribe to the channel. Do anything else that I'm supposed to tell you to do. All right, guys, have a good one. Bye.